I love single cask releases from whiskey distilleries, and today I get to try the first single cask release from one of my favourite Australian distilleries. Check it out. Hey guys, I'm Nath Martin, the Whiskey Scribe. I'm a whiskey enthusiast and I love all things whiskey. But taste is subjective and there's a lot of different whiskies out there. So whether you consider yourself a connoisseur or you're just looking to understand more about whiskey, let's explore it all together. I put up regular whiskey review videos as well as some educational exploration pieces as well. So hit subscribe and keep on watching to check out this next whiskey. So if you've watched any of the review videos on my channel, you'll know that I'm a big fan of Morris Distillery in Australia. So they were initially a winery that started in 1859. They've been making award-winning fortified wines for over 100 years. And in 2016, they started making single malt whiskey and obviously aging those whiskies in the fortified wine casks, initially aged in Shiraz and Cabernet barrels and then finished in things like muscat and sherry and Tokay and just producing beautiful sweet flavors. But what I've got today is the first single cask release from Morris Whisky. It is a Durif single barrel. So for those of you who don't know, Durif is it's a form of red wine that's got very sort of earthy cocoa sort of flavor notes in there. I'm actually a big fan of Durif. It was the red wine at our wedding by choice, and I've never actually had a single malt whiskey aged in a Durif cask. So this one was sent to me in order for me to review. The inaugural Morris single barrel release not only honours the quality and craftsmanship of Australian whiskey and winemaking, but celebrates the unique terroir. It's a French word. It means the locality of Rutherglen, home to the Morris family since 1859. As Australia's most awarded wine and whiskey brand, this single barrel release showcases the exceptional flavours forged by the surrounding landscape and natural elements. Apparently, the Morris family were amongst the first to really pioneer the idea of Durif as a table wine here in Australia. So Durif, as I said, it's known for richness and bold, full-bodied flavours. So they filled this barrel on a crisp winter Thursday in June of 2018, and since then time has allowed the natural elements of the Durif barrel to shape the unique flavour profile. So they're not actually doing an age statement on it, but if it was barreled in 2018, you're assuming, depending on when they actually extracted this from the barrel, it's getting close to maybe about 7 years of age. But I find with single cask releases, the age statement doesn't really matter. If you're releasing a whiskey just as a single cask release, it's because that particular cask is exceptionally good. So they've handpicked this one specifically because the flavors in there are fantastic, and it would almost be a crime to marry it up with other barrels. This should be tasted on its own. Now it's bottled at cask strength at a phenomenal 58.5%. So as well as being the first single cask release from Morris, I think this is actually the highest ABV they've ever actually released as well. I'm not going to bore you too much with the small talk. I'm just going to jump right into this. And I'm going to do this one in the 1920s blender's glass because this is a really special whiskey and I really want to make sure I'm capturing all those aromas. I love a Glencairn glass, but if you really want to knuckle down on it, I think the 1920s blender's glass does. It just sort of refines what you're getting on the nose and on the palate a little bit more. I don't use it all the time because they're a bitch to polish. So initially just looking at that color, there's nothing really too stand out from that. You're not getting a lot of the sort of red that you get from Shiraz and Cabernet casks, but then Durif is quite a dark colored red wine. So I'm not expecting too much red. This is it's got more of a caramelly sort of amber hue to it. And of course, I don't know if you can see that on camera there, but Morris Whisky purposely makes really, really oily whiskey. So those natural oils in the whiskey are really great at pulling the flavors from the cask and keeping it there in the whiskey and then letting it just linger on your palate. And you can see from like when there's slow moving legs like that going down the glass, that's a really good indicator that you got those natural oils in there. Now, on the nose, there's a wonderful earthy note to that. So I'm getting sort of like this combination of kind of like dark chocolate and coffee beans. And I'm picking up some wood sort of notes in there, but it's like really, really old wood. Like, you know, like, you know, if you walk into Bunnings and smell the pine in there, you're gonna get like a very different smell to if you walk into a really old barn. And that's the sort of wood smell that I'm getting on this. The other interesting thing is at almost 60% ABV, and particularly also with the blender's glass, which brings it all to a really, really narrow nose, this could, like, I've had other cask strength whiskies that in this glass would just burn your nose right out, but that's actually it's quite fragrant. It's not overly harsh. So I'm quite curious to see how this is on the palate, given that the nose is nowhere near as strong as you would expect from a 58% whiskey. Slange. I've never been disappointed by a Morris Whisky. That's got this like rich, oily, biscuity, chocolatey note to it on the palate there. That's... Oh. And then the finish. So on the palate, you've really got that richness. It's very much that oiliness that you sort of get from, you know, if you have like a dark chocolate that's not too bitter and it's sort of got this creamy sort of texture to it, sort of like if you have like old gold or something, that oiliness in your mouth that comes from that dark chocolate, that's right there. That's like a big part of this. And on the exhale, so the finish, you're getting just more and more of that dark chocolate sort of breath. I'm a big fan of chocolate, so I do sort of get a little bit of tunnel vision when I get chocolate notes. I'm in love with this whiskey. There's a little bit of a natural spice in there, so you're sort of getting some, I know you might call it a little bit of nutmeg or something like that. You've got this biscuity sort of flavor that's coming from the single malt. That, like I have to say, that dark chocolate note that you're getting from the Durif, that's really, really prevalent. Like if you're somebody who likes dark chocolate, this is the whiskey for you. If we look at the whiskey tasting notes that they've provided, color, burnished gold, rich malted biscuits and dark chocolate creme on the nose. The palate, creamy chocolate fondant, dark cocoa with hints of fresh coffee. The finish, decadent notes of chocolate orange linger on the palate, leading to warm undertones of vanilla and dried fruits. So I'm getting the chocolate, obviously. Did I mention there was chocolate? Okay, I personally wouldn't call it orange chocolate, as they say, chocolate orange, but there is like a faint zestiness in there, which comes across in quite a few of the Morris Whisky. So like, you know, on the sherry barrel, you do get a little bit of like this lemon sort of zest happening in there. So I think that's the spirit itself. I suppose if you're somebody who particularly liked orange, like Jaffas or, you know, those orange chocolate sort of flavors, you'll probably pick up more of that. But I am getting the dried fruits. Yeah, so the finish is sort of, you've got a little bit of this aftertaste of chocolate coated sultanas. Oh. Yeah, like I said, Morris has never disappointed me with a whiskey release, and for their first single cask release, that's That's something really exceptional, and I can totally understand why they decided to release that as a single cask rather than vatting it with anything else. Very limited quantities. There's only 258 bottles of this that have been made. It's been come from just one barrel the entire aging time, and really wanted to capture that unique terroir of the home of Rutherglen, the northeast Victoria. So it was made in collaboration between Darren Peck, the head distiller from Morris Whisky, and the 6th generation family chief winemaker Madden Morris. As I said, the Morris winery has been around since 1859, and the 6th generation of the people who started the winery is still working there as the chief winemaker. Most, like pretty much all of the Morris whiskies, they've been aged in a combination of Shiraz and Cabernet casks from South Australia, so not actually from the Morris winery, and then they spend their time finishing in the fortified wine casks from Morris. This is the first whiskey I've tried where it is 100% aged in casks that came from the Morris winery, and it is not a disappointment at all. I will say, because it is limited quantities, the price tag on this is a little bit higher than their usual range. I think the most expensive whiskey I've seen from Morris has been, I think it was like $189, and that's the smoked muscat and the smoked sherry. Beautiful limited releases. This one's a little bit more pricey, but it is cask strength, so 298 Australian dollars, which is a little bit more. It's more than what they usually charge for Morris whiskies, but it's not the most expensive single cask Australian whiskey out there, and it's definitely not the most expensive for that age range either. I would say, look, Father's Day is coming up. If you have a father that loves single malt whiskey and you want to get him something Australian, something unique and something limited, this would be a top choice. My son is not old enough to buy whiskey for me just yet, but I would not be disappointed if I got this on Father's Day. Anyway, that's it for this one. No matter where it's from, no matter what it costs, enjoy what's in your glass and slange. And thank you, Morris, for sharing that with me.